backtrack in just a little bit, and then I want to ask you a couple more questions about the passion. You mentioned forgiveness, and that whatever happened, it sounds like it was obviously very traumatic. I think a lot of people, including myself, struggle with forgiveness, with forgiving others, and maybe even forgiving themselves. And that creates a lot of toxicity, a lot of resentment, a lot of negative emotions. And how long did it take you to find how to forgive?
Shawn, you know, it's a journey. I think it's not, some people, I think it's instant. I think others, I think it continually, and I'll tell you this because there's pride involved in our whole makeup, and there's what are you listening to? You know, there's two masters here. Because one of the masters obviously is the angel of light, the Luciferian, Lucifer. But next to God's light is, you can see the darkness everywhere. When I focus on the scripture, and I think of the things that I've done, my own sin, and I shouldn't be forgiven for it, and He's willing to do that for me, then I have no choice but to do that for others. I'm not telling you that person that is hurting you, you have to keep being with that person. Jesus clearly says at one point, you know, dust the shoes off your sandals and move on. But you can pray for that individual. And here's when you think of principalities of good versus evil, every time you pray for them, you're moving angels in over them. So you're really afflicting them. They don't like the light on them. They want the demons around them. But by putting those angels around them, you're bringing light on them. And so then, but there's too many things to do in this world to just keep holding on to those things. And then you ultimately, for the love of, you know, we were talking about my children earlier, for the love of my children and my wife, why afflict them with the vengeance that's eventually going to come out? And you're not going to be who you used to be. It's like Darth Vader, remember Star Wars? You become more mechanical and you lose the childlike quality in you. You're not free anymore. You're oppressed. My prayer has always been, you know, can I imagine that individual that I want to hate to come back into the light again? Yes, if that's your purpose, then pray for them. That's the best chance they have ever coming back. I mean, if they're that dark and that evil. But there are sins that are unforgivable. And Jesus talks about those too. That's the rejection of the Holy Spirit. And that is a lot what is with this whole thing with the children, that many of them will never ever get a chance, because when a lot of these pedophiles, and when they do these sins, God is telling them, do you understand? This is it. And they do it anyway. And so let the dead bury their dead at that point.
I can't wait to dive into this subject. It's something that I made a promise to my audience that I would dive deep into this subject this year, and continue moving on. Back to the passion.
Yeah.
You had a extremely successful Hollywood career. I just want to say also that, I mean, you are a fantastic role model, and there aren't especially coming from Hollywood, I don't believe there are very many people in that circle that are good role models, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for you because of it. And just doing some research on you before you got here, you've turned down scenes that involve nudity, that involve sex, for your faith, for respect out of your wife. I've not heard of anybody else doing that. Also, specific scenes that have to do with violence, from what I understand, you also turn those down. And it's just really refreshing to see somebody that can stand by their values with that amount of pressure in front of them and not fold. And I want to commend you for that.
Every film has something in it that a power, and then you go, okay, what's necessary, what's not necessary. It does not mean that I will not play the devil in a movie, but the difference is I don't go to the devil to ask him how to play him. I go to God to teach me how to play this, because when I do, it should unearth you. There was a film I did with Denzel Washington, Deja Vu, and that had a lot to do with it. And so I got to write my monologue and piece in there with Denzel. Tony Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer allowed me to do it. But I looked at a lot of the, along the way, I've always got to work with really good agents, ATF, FBI, CIA, all, and I write notes down. And then I bring that back into the script. And when I got to watch some of the interrogations that I got to see, you always hear another voice coming out of these guys, like the devil speaking right through them, and talking about their destiny, their making their maker, their time, and I just would write a lot of that down, and I would pray deeply about it going into the scene, because when an individual watches the movie, watching film, time suspends itself. You know, if I said you're going to sit in this room in that chair for 2 hours, but if the actors play it right, you're so entranced into the film that time just goes by like that. And so I'm still that 14, 15-year-old kid that watches a movie, and in my mindset say, what would keep me on the edge of my seat? What would keep me entranced into this character? And the Passion of the Christ was very brutal, especially when we went to the Cat of Nine Tails. Again, where I'm working with the best people in the world that are revealing to me, this is really what happened. So when we were looking at like the Shroud of Turin, you can see the Shroud of Turin is a image of Jesus, and when you start going into the track lines on his body, you can see the bamboo sticks the Romans would have used on him. But then you all see the deep ones where it looks like the Grand Canyon in your skin, and they like. I remember Keith Vanderland saying people will go into shock, Mel, when they see this. I mean, this is a Cat of Nine Tails. This is horrific. And he said, I'll take him to the edge. So it was very brutal. But in that particular case, that violence was important because that violence is our sin. So it's always about committing to what this film needs to be. If you use every profanity in the book constantly, eventually you get numb to it. But you use it once, it'll hit you if you need it, if it's necessary in the film. Like, for example, if you watched It's a Wonderful Life, that film was very profound in its time and very hard to watch. And during Christmas, the most beautiful time of year. And you don't want to drop an F-bomb in that movie, you know? But if you watch it, it's very powerful because this guy wants to end his life. It's over. He doesn't see what his value in his life, and this angel comes to him and shows him, George, don't you understand? If you weren't around, these people wouldn't they would never have made it without you. We have to look at our lives like that. One of the most profound scenes in that movie was when Jimmy Stewart, Capra, had that camera on him. He says, God, if you're out there, please help me. And those were real tears. That man flew 26 missions in a Liberator over Germany, World War II. And you understand that when you're flying over in that tight formation and one of those planes goes out, everybody has to remain quiet on their comms. Stewart lived with PTSD his entire life, and especially in that scene. And I'm sure that trauma played out there, but God used it in the most beautiful way. Just as some of the trauma that I grew up with, God used it in the most profound way in films like Sound of Freedom or The Passion of the Christ.
When you got word about the project Passion of the Christ, it almost sounds like, well, how did you get word about that film?
Crazy. I mean, if you... So I get a call that I knew Mel Gibson was, but I did not know it was Steve McAvity. And that was his key producer, main guy. That guy did Braveheart, which was the previous film Mel had directed 15 years earlier. And so they invited me to do a film about what it was. I think it was Tom Hanks and Mel Gibson were going to do this together. It was on Mavericks. It was the big surfing wave. And the director that wanted to direct it was Kevin Reynolds, who just directed me in The Count of Monte Cristo. So I went to meet them, and Mel wasn't even supposed to show up, but he did about 40 minutes in. And we were talking about the movie. I didn't think the script was there yet. And I was going to be a hard film to shoot because I'm not a surfer, but I was a basketball player. So I thought maybe, anyway, but the material wasn't there. And I was talking to him about the material, and then all of a sudden Mel pivot to something. And then I went back to when I was a young man in the theater. And I said, oh my God, this is why he called me to become an actor. And I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he looked at me, he was smoking a cigarette, and he just, yeah, put his head down. And he was really scared. And I said, okay. He just, what? What? Like, how can you, what? Okay. So I had all that preparation.
What was the fear, do you think?
Well, 2 days later, he called me at my house, and I was taking the garbage out. And I heard, I picked up the phone, and I said, yeah, I was busy. And he goes, hey, Jim, it's Mel. I said, Mel who? He goes, I don't know, Mel Brooks. Hey, he was smoking a cigarette, and he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may never work in this town again. And I was like, scared. It scared me. I was telling you, I just bought a Lamborghini. And I was, I'm going to have to give all this stuff back. And I was scared for a moment, and then this peace came over me. And I could feel it. It was from heaven. And I said, look, man, we're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. And then he got really quiet on the phone. And then I said, oh my God. He said, what? I said, I just realized my initials are JC and I'm 33 years old. And he goes, God, you're freaking me out. And he hung up the phone. And then McAvity came probably 5 days later. And then that was it.
Did Mel have fear too, to ask?
Sure he was.
What do you think his fear was?
None of us are good enough to do it. None of us are. It's because of who we are, our past, everything, what we're talking about. But the shame. But I told my friend about that. His name was Ivan. And I said, he said, you know, Jim, God doesn't always choose the best, but he chose you. What are you going to do about it? You know, I kept my rosary with me. I prayed. I took the Eucharist every day. And I went to confession every day. The rosary is awesome because you're meditating on the entire Gospels. And when I was up there on the cross, I would pick 10 people out of the audience, actually 11. The first one was the Our Father, and then I did 10 Hail Marys, but I continued to pray the sorrowful mystery as I was up there. And so I started in the Garden of Gethsemane. I thought of the entire garden. Then I went to the scourging scene. I thought of the scourging scene, and I went from there to the crown of thorns, humiliation. And then, and I would just look at one thing because I couldn't feel my hands anymore. My hands were numb. At the end of the movie, my body's blue. And they brought a stand up, and this doctor came up, and he could hear my heart was in AFib. I would have to have 2 major heart surgeries, including open heart. And then I was struck by lightning on the last shot of the movie. And so I just kept going, but I remember hearing Jesus say to me, am I too close? And I said, you're not close enough. So I was at peace that, you know, that if this happened, I felt like I did something in this life. I served my purpose.
Why would playing Jesus Christ destroy your relationship with Hollywood, or potentially destroy it? Why would they shun you?
Well, they did it immediately when I took the film. I was on all the studio lists. They have to answer that question.
That's sad.
The Christian bigotry is the most accepted form of bigotry there is. And they need to be called to task on it. Why? But here's the other thing. Why do we pay money to go to their shit? Why? Why support it anymore? If we, as Christians, said, that's it, and this is like, we need you on this film, Sound of Freedom, but because it's amazing. Now, I don't do faith-based films. I hate that. You know why? We never used it as a crutch on The Passion. And all of a sudden, we were the faith-based film. We never called ourselves faith-based. We were, here's a phenomenal movie. We can beat anybody in the world. We have the truth, right? The truth sets you free. Go to the film, see if it does. But now it's like, we made a faith-based film for you. And so you owe us your money. No, you don't. You don't put that and don't manipulate them. And that's another thing that is not Christianity, is that crap. Is you know, like we're one of the club. I don't use that thing that I'm saved. I look at what Apostle Paul said. When you contemplate your salvation, do it in fear and trembling. That's how I look at it. And finish the race. My race isn't done. I've got a lot more to go. But I don't like that manipulation stuff. And Jesus is not a manipulator. And that is not Christianity at all. It needs to be authentic. Jesus is authentic. He's the most authentic thing that has ever existed.
Was that a tough decision for you at all? Or was it snap of the finger, I'm 100% in, no matter what happens?
The Passion? Yes, because of what happened in the movie theater when I was young, yeah.
We talked a little bit about spiritual warfare before
Yes.
We started recording, and with my new faith, I think it's my mission to spread the word, and it's already connecting me to people that I never would have been connected with before, like yourself, a couple other people that are coming on the show soon. And everybody that's around me that is a believer, that's close to me, has come to me and told me, be careful. You need to watch out. Eli Crane told me there are no free shots on target when you're talking about spiritual warfare, and that evil will start to try to seep into my life the louder I get about this. Did you experience anything like that?
That right there, what you're saying, that's garbage.
Okay.
And I want to tell you, Michael the Archangel is a patron saint to the Navy SEALs. Do you know this prayer? Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all these wicked spirits that move throughout the world. These entities will pay a high price when they dare get near God's children. And you're God's child. Your prayers, see, every time they do that, they risk being tossed into the furnace forever. And so this is their job. They serve underneath this wicked beast, and he's a beast. But we have to be, you're different. Jesus often references sheep all the time. And when Jesus goes and leaves to find that one rescue sheep, which I was, but I've gone to other levels. So what would that be? Well, when he's gone looking for that sheep, that lost sheep, he's got sheepdogs that got wolf in them. And then we'll kill any of them that come near those sheep. We defend them. We protect them. They're also wolves that have converted. And that's a different type of guy. That guy, he's lethal. So you've got the wolves coming in, you've got converted wolves, they know how they hunt, and then you got the sheepdog. This is how it's got to be, to take them out. And he's allowing us to step up like David. You know, I got this wrong the other day. It was Samuel, I said Jeremiah. It was Nathan, blah, 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 but it's Samuel. Samuel the prophet goes and finds this, is told that out of this man's home is going to be one of the heads of, is going to be the head of king of Israel. So he goes and meets all the boys, and he says, none of these are going to be the head of Israel. And then the father, he asks the father, by chance you have another kid? He says, yeah, I'll back. Can you imagine the father didn't even think nothing of his own son, David? He's outside, he's a sheep herder. It's nothing. Man, I want to be a sheep herder like that. I want to love God in a profound way that when I was 16 years old and they were talking smack about my God, that ain't going to happen around me. So I said, I'm going to go down and I'm going to kill this son of a bitch, Goliath. After I kill him, you're going to come around and take him out. But David was, what was profound, it was like, nobody talks about my father this way. Nobody. He loved them that much. Can you imagine? Our good God, he's not loved enough by us. He will gladly send his armies to protect us, but we don't love him enough. We have to be above the status quo of this modern day Christianity crap, which I'm telling you, this prosperity gospel is shit. Do you know that? You know, the Bible wants you to have beautiful things, man. That's fine if you can hand it all back. The things that I have in this life, my wife, my children, that family, that's it with God to me. I love beautiful things. I love Lamborghini and all that. But hey, listen, if I have to give it back, fine, done. It's over. So it's not authentic, and there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing in our this modern day Christianity. It's fake. It's in the church, it's in the clergy, it's in the bishops, pastors. They'll tell you. But the one that hits me is the one where I know God's here, you know? I don't know you that long. I walked in here and I feel it already. I knew it the moment I met you. Said, you're going to know this guy for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Jim, reason I'm asking is there are some definite things that happened during that film that I would consider to be a deterrent, especially to weak people. You were electrocuted, struck by lightning. We talked about some of the other things that happened. We talked about, I mean, even from the beginning when you accepted it, you knew you were going to be shunned. Do you think that was a deterrent from the devil to keep you from doing this?
Sure. On the way up the hill, he said, you're a dead man. And my response to him was, praise be to God.